Tomorrow we will have a debriefing of the European Council, but as of today, I would like to ask you two questions. It seems to me that the threat to the euro can be analyzed both from a short-term viewpoint and a longer-term one. Well, the short-term issue is there still a risk that speculation destroys the euro? The very possibility of blowing up of the euro has now become a reality in psychological terms. So that's the short term. But the question, of course, is whether or not the measures that are being taken by the European Council will be enough for this very short-term issue. Now, assuming the short-term issue is fixed, what about the long term? And here it seems to me there is an issue of competitivity, or differential competitivity. There is a lot of debate. You know, is it possible in the long term to maintain a European Union if some countries are very much lagging behind others in terms of competitivity? So this is a much more structural issue.
I'm not, well, I've been a central banker now for 10, 11 years. I spent part of that career in dealing with infrastructures, payment systems, you know, big infrastructures. And it is true that in infrastructures, I'm used to the doomsday scenarios. You know, I was at one point in a workshop with the Federal Reserve in Washington, and we had, you know, a nuclear attack on Washington, and how would the payment system in the US continue with September 11 stories and all that. I'm not making scenarios, doomsday scenarios on this. I think what has happened in the short run, and really think about that, I think is the realization not only among policymakers, politicians, about what would that mean, that doomsday scenario that you mentioned that. The stakes are extremely high. I think what is happening is understanding what that would mean. And I was very happy to see that some analysts that some months ago were saying, it's sufficient for one country, don't like it, they leave it, or that would be an easy solution to the other problem that you mentioned. I was very happy to see that these people start to say, what would that mean? And here, we are together here to discuss this issue beyond Europe. But that when the cooperative solution breaks down, because that's what is at hand, that would be extremely damaging consequences for everybody. And this is, I think, this is what is being understood. Now, of course, politicians say these are very complex issues and we need more time. And this is a little bit the discussion, who gives time, how does it happen? I'm not going to comment, you know, this is a little bit the discussion that usually you hear. But on the objective and the firm willingness, I think, to say we continue and we keep it, I think this is understood. Even says, it would be so easy if one or the other would. No, I think now it's very understood. What would that really mean? So it's people understand that. This is very important in all situations. It's collective interest. And now the other question about is a simple question actually. Is a monetary union sustainable? I mean, I'm not experiment. I'm getting old, really. And it's when you look backwards. I look backwards, and I saw all these currency or money creation, I mean, in history was very often a solution to avoid, you know, to gain time and things like that. The evaluation would be the same of the currency. You have problems with your labor markets, you have rigidities and all that, you postpone the problem, you can find funding for a while, and then there is a confidence, trust, and then you devalue the currency, and it's, fine, I get 30% devaluation, and then I can start again. I thought with all the experience we had, starting from a long time ago, also the 30s, the currency story of the 30s and all that. I thought that we had learned from that also in Europe, where we have this single market and where a number of countries had that experience of 92, 93, you remember? And the very risk we had in the internal market related to the currency problems we had. Now, of course, I can also admit that some countries can have independent monetary policy and exchange rate, which is like Sweden, for example. So I understand that, of course, and I don't see any problem. But the discussion is here to see, do you think that the rigidities that you have in a number of countries, which led to the problem, are going to be really addressed because you would have a monetary solution to that. No, it's not a monetary solution that's going to fix it. And because of the stress that what your assumptions would imply, I don't think anyone envisages that. Now it's going to be tough for some countries. It's true. But I mean, if I look at some countries, think about Germany after reunification. That was a huge, huge, huge effort. So when people say it's difficult to understand, you have Germany, you have the other countries there. I mean, my mother is German, and I know from all what she told me, I mean, her instincts about the reunification, she was from the West and of Germany. And when you see all these things and the huge effort that has been and the efforts all over these years, I mean, these things are really possible, but there must be a will there. It's hard, but it's feasible.
Thank you very much. So we have time for one question, maybe two, depending on the length of the question and the length of the answer. So I see an arm. Please do. Yes. A micro is coming, I think.
Merci beaucoup. Je suis Paul Frisvold, président de Belluna et la Fondation européenne de Norvège. I'm going to ask my question in English because Mr. de Montebray asked a good question if speculators can ruin the euro. Well, my question to Mr. Pratt is, how is it that we can allow speculators? And when will Europe actually take measures to reduce the power of these speculators?
And you will have other people tomorrow, I guess. Who are I mean, what is a speculator? When we looked, I mean, who are selling Italian bonds and things like that? Who are, and when you look at that, who are the speculators? Very often you see long-term investors, pension funds, insurance companies, and it's not necessarily those, hedge funds or what that are really doing that. And so when the question of trust comes about policy, very simple, governance, as you said, governance, doubts on good governance. It's not really speculators. Of course, the speculators can destabilize faster because, financial markets can move very quickly. Brutally, it's absolutely true. But basically, your fundamentals must be right. And no, that's the first part of the answer. The second part of the answer, so don't make too many illusions, because those who you call speculators have very often le bon père de famille, as you would say. They would say, well, I don't know what could happen, but in doubt, maybe I sell this position, I sell these bonds ahead, and I buy something else. And if everybody does, then you get it. And then you call them speculator. And it can be many institutional investors, for example, just wanted to save the money of their customers. So, of course, financial markets can be very brutal because there are very limited transaction costs, a lot of information, a lot of noise coming in. What we try, of course, to do at the global level, and that in the speech which was prepared actually for Mario Draghi, and that will be distributed at the end of this conference today. We took a number of initiatives before the crisis, unfortunately, was not sufficient. After the crisis, and as you know, Mario was chairing until recently the Financial Stability Board, where under the umbrella of the G20, we have a huge agenda of reforms. And I think a lot of things are being done and continue to be. It's a big story because you have to redesign a little bit the financial infrastructure that we have. In my job, I work about making the system more resilient, you probably think about derivative markets, which allows, market participant to short, very quickly at very low transaction cost, a country or a corporation or a bank. And there are plans, as you know, there's a huge project, but these are things you cannot change in one day, unfortunately. The G20, for example, in derivative markets, to put them on organized, exchanges in Dodd-Frank in the US and the EMIR project in Europe. So these are things going on. We put a very, very difficult, tight agenda for end of 2012, and I'm working on these issues. But it's going to be time. But fundamentally, never forget, when trust is lost, it's not only that. There are good reasons, and those selling we have seen are very often bon père de famille, institutional investors. We have seen Japanese long-term investors. And I think the response is really what Thierry started to say. You need to be serious in your governance. You have to identify the problems. You have to act. And it is true they have been slow to act. They underestimated the problem. Under the pressure of the financial markets that came in, there were some noise to say the ECB has to create money and to help. That was not done. And so I think now the political sector understand, the politicians understand what is going on. It's not yet finished. I fully agree. It's still tight. I think there are good results. Take a little bit historical distance. I think it's on the good way.
One short question, and that will be the end. Mr. Chetrit. You will have 2 micros. I don't know which one will come first. Lady.
One, okay. It seems to me that there is some kind of confusion between the tasks of banks and central banks and between the tasks of governments. From my point of view, I think that governments are supposed to take the steps in order to correct the situation, the economical situation in different countries. And usually governments are doing the easy way. When we have a problem, look at the United States. President Obama give to the banks hundreds of billions of dollars.
More.
And more. Now, banks sometimes have the task only to manage the money, not really to make the economical policy. My question is, where is your input in the discussion which exists today in Europe, confronting the situation, what's going to happen with the euro? Where is the input of the central bank in those negotiations between the prime ministers and the president of Germany, France, etc.?
But on the first, I have to be extremely brief now. I go very well along with your first part. I think those coming and say, take easy solutions, basically related to money creation, basically. I think we have to think a little bit further than say, do that. And I think it's a little bit the message we're going to see what happens in other constituencies. I sense that's the first part of your intervention. What you do, I mean, there have been, the term compact, for example, a new compact, fiscal compact, was, in a speech of Mario, this, I think, one of his first speeches of Mario Draghi on that. And there is a lot of thinking from the beginning, long before the crisis, signaling the weaknesses in the economic part of EMU. I mean, I can remind you all the speeches. Jean-Claude was here, I think, also in Thierry in the conference, and Jean-Claude has been extremely vocal since many years and tried to influence. I'm not going to tell you all, but the central bankers, as you know, are it's a very strong worldwide network internationally. That's why we are usually well informed. But usually we see these things, these weaknesses of governance, and we are quite involved. Some politicians do not like it, but I mean, these things have been flagged. But we have our mandate, and our mandate, especially here, is well defined. And I think it has to be like this, a temptation, to go, as you said before, the easy way, and given the illusion that you will not have to address these fundamental problems that have been pushed very often under the carpet for many years. Now they came back forcefully, and I understand, not pleasantly. I fully agree. I mean, that's absolutely difficult. But we heard this story so long time, always, more time and give us more time. So I think now is really the pressure. Unfortunately, it's not optimal. It is happening. There are some very good measures being taken all over the place. Take a little bit perspective. We'll see.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. I think you showed us that you are very much aware, I mean, not only you, but the European Central Bank, of the historical role which is yours and the network of central banks more generally. So thank you very much. We'll let you go because you have to catch your plane. Thank you very, very much. And I invite immediately the speakers of the next roundtable on the Arab Spring. So thank you very much.